By early 1945, Hitler's Third Reich was entering its death throes. In the west, Allied forces had pushed to within striking distance of the Rhine. In the east, the Red Army was crossing the Polish border into Germany. As the Allies battled their way towards Berlin from east and west, the Germans fought them all the way. But it was a hopeless task. By May 1945, Hitler would be dead, and Germany finally defeated. February 1945, and the Allied forces in the west had assembled near the Rhine for the final push into Germany. In the north were the massed ranks of Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group. To its south was General Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group. It included the US Third Army, commanded by General George Patton. On February the 8th, Montgomery's Army Group launched a two-pronged assault on German forces defending the Rhine. The northern prong had to fight its way through the wooded countryside. The southern prong was delayed when the Germans released water from a series of dams, flooding the surrounding area. It would be over 2 weeks before the two prongs met up on the west bank of the Rhine. By early March 1945, Montgomery's forces were in control of some 60 miles of the west bank of the river. The next task was to cross it. South of Montgomery, Bradley's armies were also moving eastwards, looking for a route across the river. On March the 7th, 1945, they reached the Rhine at Cologne. But Hitler had ordered all the bridges to be destroyed. Then, as the US forces explored further south, they found one bridge still intact near the small town of Remagen. They made a dash for it, brushing aside German resistance. Then, just as they were about to cross it, there was an explosion. But against the odds, the bridge remained standing. A small group of Americans raced across it, desperately cutting any wires that looked like demolition cables. US commanders began to push men across as fast as possible. The Allies had at last penetrated the German heartland. In Berlin, news of the capture of the bridge at Remagen infuriated Hitler. 5 junior officers were court-martialed. 4 were shot. In addition, the long-suffering German commander in the west, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, was sacked. It was the second time it had happened to him in less than a year. He was replaced by veteran commander Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, who'd been in overall charge in North Africa and Italy. Over the next week, the Germans launched desperate air attacks to try and destroy the bridge at Remagen. None of them succeeded. Then, suddenly, on March the 17th, while combat engineers were repairing it, the bridge unexpectedly collapsed. "28 men plunged to their deaths. The first Allied thrust into Germany had been blocked. Meanwhile, further north, Montgomery was preparing the first full-scale Allied crossing of the Rhine. On March the 23rd, 1945, he launched an aerial bombardment on German forces defending the east bank of the river. Some 200 RAF Lancaster bombers virtually flattened the town of Wesel. Then British commandos in Buffalo amphibious vehicles crossed. They met little opposition from the dazed German defenders. Other divisions followed. The crossing lasted all night. The following day, in the largest airborne operation of the war, 17,000 men of British 6th and US 17th Airborne Divisions were dropped to seize key positions east of the river. They were met by heavy German anti-aircraft fire. A newsreel report told the story.
In a short time, hundreds of gliders make their hazardous landings, their men beginning the fight as soon as they land. One glider has its wing shot away when only 50 feet from the ground.
More than half the gliders were destroyed or damaged before landing. But within hours, the paratroopers linked up with Montgomery's land forces and the Allied bridgehead was secured. It should have been, for the ferociously competitive Montgomery, a moment of glory. But he'd been upstaged. The night before, his great rival, General Patton, had unexpectedly crossed the Rhine near Oppenheim and had already entered Germany. It was a sign of the intense rivalry between Montgomery and American commanders as they competed to be the first into Germany. Over the next few days, there were more Allied crossings. German defenses along the Rhine collapsed. In the north, Montgomery now pushed deeper into Germany, towards Munster. In the south, Bradley's forces, including Patton's Third Army, pushed east towards Marburg and Lauterbach. The major German city of Frankfurt am Main was circled and bypassed. Die-hard German troops fought back ferociously. But by now there was no question that the Germans were finished. The only issue was when they would realize it.